All right, hello, welcome to our last preaching class in Old Testament preaching.
Hallelujah.
And if you're on YouTube, sorry, you're not going to have any more recordings of me from this class, so you better watch this one and enjoy it, because it's the last one. And Kyle was talking just about rest, so if you're watching this video, go watch Kyle's message too. That's probably going to be better than mine. I'm just kidding. So, I don't know. It's a brother rivalry going on here. He's going to be my future brother-in-law. I'm engaged to his sister. Speaking on that subject, we're going to be talking about. I like to use the board whenever I get the chance. There's one. Speaking of which, God has a plan. And I'm going to, if you know anything about my life situation currently, you can understand why I'm talking about this. God has...
I haven't had a clue in the last 3 years.
So God has a plan. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm just going to walk you through what my life has been like in the last 9 months. It's definitely been quite a roller coaster. Now, Amber and I started dating in January of 2016. And so she graduated from college in the spring of 2016. And we're 700 miles away from each other. I'm in Georgia, she's in Michigan. And we're trying to decide what we're going to do next. What's our next step as a couple? And Amber's like, okay, I think if we want to get any closer, if we really want to pursue this path, that we think this relationship's going to be good for us, then let's move closer together. And so Amber moves down to Georgia, which is a huge step of faith, to move 700 miles for someone you've been dating for 4 months. You know, I mean, it's been a lot longer pursuit than that. Trust me.
Now we get the details.
But so she moves down because I really can't move from college. So she moves down, bless her heart, to be by me. And so I have the pleasure of being the man in her relationship, which means I get to carry all the washers and dryers and move all of her heavy stuff up to her apartment on the 3rd floor, bless her heart. So we move her washer and dryer with the help of Mitch Raper up to the 3rd floor. We get her all settled in, right? And this is around August of last year. So I come down, I help her get set up. I figured I should help move her into her apartment and do as much as I can because she's moving 700 miles away from her family. Kyle's down here, but 700 miles away from what she knows to be by me. So I'm like, okay, let's be as nice as possible here and try to help her out. So then at the end of the semester, that semester goes great. Last semester during the fall of 2016 goes great. Everything's good. And my dad says, hey, Josiah, you're in college now. Your brother's in college now. I need to save some money. Like, you know, money's tight. We need to save some money. So if you could find a place that's cheaper to live, some place that, you know, you could save some money, that'd be great. And I said, okay, listen, Dad. Hey, I know a guy who I think I can stay with. And I'll move in there if we bargain a little bit. I'll move all my stuff. I'll live there for free if you fix the AC on my car, right? So I was like, he's like, okay, I see. You're an adult now. You know how to get what you want. Unfortunate for me. And so my dad's like, okay, you save me $2,000, I'll fix your AC. You save me $3,000, I'll fix your AC. I was like, okay, sounds fair to me. So I move over Christmas break into this guy's house, right? And I'm like, things are working out pretty well. I'm living for free. I'm making plans for something really big and exciting to happen. My life is going pretty well at this point, and I'm feeling pretty good. Like, I'm living for free. I got an easy, I got a good job schedule set up. My college is going well, and then halfway through February, about a month after I moved in, I got kicked out of this guy's house. It was a shock, and it wasn't a good situation. And it was probably one of the lowest lows I've ever been at, the most unloved I've ever felt at that moment. And that was a really bad day for me. I had no notice to move out I had all my stuff moved in 5 hours from that house to back to the apartments that I was in at the college. Thankfully, my friends came through and they helped me move. They were great. They all hopped on board, and I was out and moved into the new house within 5 hours, which is incredible. So that was pretty low for me. But 2 weeks later was one of the highest moments in my life when I asked Amber to marry me. I had been planning that like crazy for the month and a half before that, and I was talking to her dad, like, hey, can I marry your daughter? Rick's like, sure. And he's like, anything to get her off my hands? And Amber said yes, kind of. She was just kind of standing there, and she mouthed it more than she said it. I assume that she said yes anyway. So now things are looking pretty good again. It's not the best living situation. I'm sharing a room with Jacob Parr. Not that anything is against him, but it's a small room. But I do really like Jacob. And so it's a good situation. And I'm going to get married to Amber. And so then I get offered a job, a really good paying job at a warehouse. They're good Christian folks over there. I get offered a job. I wasn't even seeking it. They came to me through some relationships I have with some people. They put my name in there, and they called me, and they asked me to work with them. So I'm scrambling around trying to get my schedule changed, my classes changed. That way I can work this job. Yeah, get preaching class moved back later so I can come in and preach and still be in class, but still work this job and get paid a lot of money. I'm like, man, I'm going to be loaded. I'm going to be able to save up for my future family and, all this stuff. This is just looking great. I work there 1 day a week to kind of just get into the swing of things, right? And they say, hey, we're going to have this week coming up where one of the guys who's normally working here is going to be gone on spring break. Hey, can you work a ton of hours, right? I'm like, yeah. So I clear out my schedule that week. I'm going to skip classes because they need me there and I'm trying to make a good impression. And the week before that, they said, this is your last day. We got the position filled. We don't need you. I'm like, are you serious? I just spent the last 3 weeks busting my butt so that I can work for you for this week. And you tell me that. So I worked a total of 5 days. Hey, it was some good extra pocket cash. But I'm like, man, oh my gosh. First, I get kicked out of the guy's house, and then I think I'm going to get this good job that I'm let down. Again, I get fired, not because I did anything bad, but because it just worked out that way. And I told God at the beginning, I was like, okay, God, if you don't want me in this situation, just shut the door, and I'll walk away. Right? So I did. I didn't fight it. I didn't say, hey, listen, you told me I could work this week because I've been really busting my butt so I could be here for you guys, and you say you don't need me more? What's going on? I didn't do that. It's like, okay, speak my piece. I wouldn't have been here anyway. I got offered the job. I don't think God wants me here, so I left. Total of 5 days. So I'm also pretty low at this point too, because I was riding. I was just totally lost. I was riding on working all summer. I cleared out my schedule all summer. Guys, I'm not going to any camps. Don't even ask me to do anything because I'm going to be working all summer. I'm going to be making bank. Be living down here by myself. It's going to really suck, but being away from Amber for so long. But I'm going to do it. And Kyle, I'm going to miss Kyle and Jacob and Dr. Joe. And anyway, so I planned my entire summer around this company because they said that they were going to give me a full-time position. And they said, this is your last day.
That's tough.
And so I'm like, well, what do I do now? What do I do now? It's a month before summer ends, or before school ends, and I need to find something to do during the summer. I'm not going to just sit at my mom and dad's house and not do anything. Like Kyle said, working is good. So I need to find something to do. Miraculously, I run into this person on the third floor I put together a desk for, and she said, hey, we're actually looking for someone to come help us, and you would be a really great fit. Can you come work for us? And I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds great, because literally a day before you asked me, I just got fired from my other job. That sounds great. And she's like, great, you have a clear schedule now? And I'm like, this is dandy. So I was really low, and then, went right back up. And I was like, oh, what is going to happen next? Amber and her roommate have a falling out. And so Amber, like, is in emotional distress. I'm over here pretty much helpless, can't really do anything to mediate the situation, make it any better, because it's really between them. There's nothing I can do. So I'm over here watching my fiance go through this emotional distress. I really can't do anything. They end up moving out. So the washer and dryer that I had to carry up, I had to carry back down with the help of Kyle. We had to move out in one day. Again, we moved out in one day. Well, I guess it was technically two, but pretty much everything came out in one day. We had to come back and get the washer and dryer later. But we moved out again in one day, and now Amber is in the house across the street from me. I'm like, what is going on? I was like, what is going on, God? I was like, I thought I had everything lined up with a free house, a good job, and I thought I was going to be making money over the summer so I can save up for my wedding and my honeymoon that I'm going to go on, and now Amber is living across the street from me. I'm not really sure what's going on this summer. I don't have any plans. Am I going to stay here? I don't know what's going on. Everything just kind of seemed to be in this state of movement. Nothing is for sure, and nothing is settled. I'm like, oh, I have nothing to stand on, no solid ground. What is going on? And then I'm like, hey, Seth, I'm the president of the Bible college. Is there anything I can do this summer? Does anybody want an internship? He's like, oh yeah, Melinda just texted me like a day ago and said, hey, if you got someone, send them over. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. That's great. Yeah, tell them I'll be there. I want to go to McGinneytown. And he's like, great, I'll hook you guys up. So do an internship in McGinneytown, Arkansas, because the opportunity just happened to be there when I needed it. Just like the job opportunity happened to be there when I needed it, right? And then, that got me up here a little bit, from all the way down here, it got me here. And then Seth came to Amber and I, and they're like, hey, you know what, Seth? You just saw Amber. We're building a new house at the Bible college, and we don't want it to be vacant. So if Amber could be the dorm mom, if you guys get married, you guys can live there if you want to in the house by yourself. I'm like, yeah, yes, please. So we're getting married in September. When we were going to get married in 2018, God opened up that door. And if you asked me, we're getting married in 4 months. Is that not crazy? I'm going to be a married man next semester. If you asked me 9 months ago, when I was carrying a washer and dryer up to the 3rd floor in Amber's apartment, or even a year ago when I just started dating Amber for a couple months, if you asked me then to predict what was going to happen, it would have been impossible. I would not have been able to see the road that was set before me.
Amen.
So God has a plan. Can you say it with me? God has a plan, but we can't always see it. And today we're going to talk about a story that has a lot of curvy paths, some switchbacks, some dead ends, and you really can't tell what the ending is going to be from the beginning. So open up your Bible, to the book of Esther. It's about a third of the way through your Bible as far as thickness goes. Right before Job, right after Ezra and Nehemiah, so it's in that neighborhood. And we're just going to start the first chapter. What a better place to start than right at verse 1, right?
Amen.
I need another drink of water, man.
That was exciting.
Roller coasters make you tired, I'm telling you. Okay. So King Ahasuerus, he is the king of he's the king of the time, around 483 BC, right? And the Jews are in exile, okay? So he is over 127 different provinces. He has a big kingdom. And so King Ahasuerus is sitting there in his throne, and he summons his wife. And his wife does not come. Now let me tell you that if you're the king of 127 provinces, when you ask people to do things, you expect them to do it, even if it's your wife. It's not quite the mutual, equal relationship kind of marriage we have these days. It's more of like, hey, you're pretty, and it's going to help my alliance if I marry you. Hey, we're going to get married. You better do what I say. And so she doesn't come. And his advisors are like, hey, we got a big problem on our hands. Your wife didn't come, if we don't handle this, then all the other women in your kingdom think they can talk back to their men, and that is not going to be good. We got to get this situation handled ASAP. And so he's like, okay, I agree with you guys. And so they're like, let's get some virgins. Let's get some pretty virgins, line them up, and they're going to be interviewed, if you know what I mean by the king. And he's going to see which one he wants to marry. And so they find the most pretty women in their kingdom. And they bring them up and they get them ready. And there's this man named Mordecai, who just so happens to be a gatekeeper in one of Ahasuerus' castles. And he has a kind of an adopted daughter. Her parents died, and so he took her in. He's her uncle. He took her in, and he happens to be kind of associated with the king, so he puts in a good word for his niece. And he says, hey, I have this niece named Esther. She's really pretty. See if she can win the king's favor. And so they get her ready. They bring her to the eunuch who's in charge of looking after the king's women. And he's like, hey, this is a good contender right here. So they get her ready for a year. They do 6 months of one treatment and 6 months of another treatment, getting her ready and grooming her to see the king. And finally, her big day comes. She goes overnight to the king, and she comes back, and the king was in love with her, right? Absolutely enamored with her. So he makes her king. Makes her queen. I apologize. So he makes Esther queen of this great nation, and hopefully she learned her lesson, right? Because the last queen, all she did was not come when the king asked. She got booted from her position. Luckily, she didn't get killed for that. So Esther needs to know her place, right? Like, learn from the mistakes of the people before you. Don't backtalk the king. Follow his directions, right? Or I could be out of here just as fast as she was. So Esther finds favor with the king, and she becomes queen. And so Mordecai, being in kind of the service of the king, he's sitting around one day, and some of the eunuchs, the servants of the king who are in charge of kind of advising him, they get angry with the king. And Mordecai overhears, finds out about the situation, about them trying to plot to kill the king, right? So Mordecai has Esther's ear, and Esther has the king's ear, right? So because of Mordecai's connections with the king, he says, hey, Esther, tell the king that there's someone trying to kill him. There's a plot against his life. And so Esther tells the king investigates the situation, and it's found out to be true, and the two servants that were going to kill him were hanged at the gallows, right? And so the king is just so thankful, and this goes down in his book of Chronicles, where it's kind of recording his history and things that happened in his life. So this gets recorded, and so now there's an open position in the king's court, and he finds this man named Haman, right? And so Haman becomes the king's advisor, kind of, and he's made more powerful than any of the princes of the territory. He's like the second-hand most powerful, or I guess it goes the king, the queen, and then it goes Haman. So he's a pretty powerful dude. And so let's go ahead and read chapter 3 of Esther, and we're going to read the first 2 verses. So after these events, after the killing of these 2 servants who were going to kill the king, after these events, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him to establish his authority over all the princes who were with him. All the king's servants who were with the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman. Right? So these people came and they prostrated themselves before the great and powerful Haman. So for the king had commanded concerning him. Everybody said, hey, you need to give this guy respect. Ahasuerus said, hey, you need to give this guy respect. He deserves it. He's powerful, right? Everyone bowed down before him, but Mordecai neither bowed nor paid homage. He's a Jew. Mordecai's a Jew. Now, one important thing about this story is that they really don't know who Mordecai's history, and they don't know Esther. They don't know that she's a Jew, right? That's important to the story here. Mordecai said, hey, we're going to get you into this, but don't tell anybody that you're a Jew, okay? Just kind of keep that low-key. No one really needs to know. It's not that they were ashamed of it, it's just kind of better for them if they keep it that way. So because Mordecai is a Jew, he does not bow and worship people He only bows and worships God.
Amen.
So he doesn't bow to Haman. And Haman, is enraged. He's just infuriated by this. It's just amazing. He's like a grown-up child, this Haman. He just cannot handle any disappointment. He is a man baby. And so Mordecai infuriates Haman because he doesn't bow to him. And so Haman goes around trying to solve his problem, and he goes to the king and the rest of the chapter 3, and he says, hey, King Ahasuerus, you know these people, these Jews in your kingdom, they're scattered all around, but none of them keep the laws that you have. None of them actually follow the laws. They have different laws. They have their own laws, and it wouldn't be good for you to have them in their kingdom because they're going to not worship you, right? And so I think we should just kill them all. And the king's like, you know what, Haman? I think you're right. Let's write an edict and let's kill all of the Jews. That way, there's not going to be anybody that doesn't follow my rules, right? And so they write this edict and it's sent out to all of the kingdom that to kill the Jews. And Mordecai is just absolutely shocked. He's just absolutely shocked because he cannot believe what just happened. Let's read actually let's read chapter 3, 8 through 9. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people, this is kind of what I just told you, scattered among the people in all the province of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of your people. They don't observe the king's laws. So it is not the king's interest to let them remain. If it is pleasing the king, let it be decreed that they may be destroyed, and I will pay them 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who carry the king's business to put into the king's treasuries. So not only... Okay, so just to show you the grotesque overstatement of Haman trying to solve his problems, one man did not bow down to worship him, so he's going to eradicate his people. That's how he's going to solve his problem, and he's going to bribe the king to do it. So when Mordecai, because he's kind of associated with the king, finds out about this, let's read verse 4, chapter 4, verse 1. When Mordecai learned all that had been done, he tore his clothes, ripped his clothes, and put on sackcloth of ashes, and went into the midst of the city and wailed loudly and bitterly, "Oh, woe is me, my people, they're going to be killed." He went as far as the king's gate, for no one was to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. So he went as far as the king's gate, wailing back and forth, all the way up and down the city, complaining, crying out to God, because of the great atrocity that's been committed against his people. They're going to be killed in genocide by the king's order. And so Esther finds out that Mordecai is in sackcloth and ashes. That's how the Jews grieve. She asks her servant to go ask Mordecai, what is going on? She sends him clothes like, hey, come on, get back up, It can't be that bad, right? And Mordecai responds, and he tells her what's going on. Hey, the Jews, your people, they're all going to be killed. We're all going to die. Your people. So Esther is like, well, what should we do? Let's go ahead and read chapter 4, 12 to 17. This is the dialogue that they have. Then they related Esther's words to Mordecai. Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than any of all the other Jews. Don't think that you're going to get off the hook just because you're in the king's palace. For if you remain silent at this time, if you do not speak up for your people, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews in another place. And you, your father's house, will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this. Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go assemble all the Jews who are found in Susa, that's the capital city, and fast for me. And do not drink for 3 days, nights, do not think for 3 days or nights. And I will have my maidens also fast in the same way. And thus I will go into the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and did just as Esther had commanded him. So the situation is set up here. This is the twist in the story that we weren't expecting. all the Jews are going to be killed. And Mordecai is saying, listen, if you don't speak up now, things could end really poorly. I believe, Mordecai is saying, I believe that deliverance is going to come for the Jewish people in another way. But if you don't speak up now, you're going to be betraying who you are. And so she's like, the first thing she does, such a godly way to respond to this. She says, fast for me. I'm going to go to prayer. We're going to fast for 3 days. We're going to really give our attention to here. And the law of the land was, if you weren't invited to the court of the king, then you were going to be killed unless he extended his scepter to you. And if he did, then your life would be spared. And so if you walked in the king's court and he wasn't expecting you, there's a good chance that you were going to get killed. And so that's what she says. I'm going to go and talk to him, and if I perish, I perish. If I die, I die. But at least I'm going to try my best. Please fast for me. What a godly way to respond to the situation. So, Esther goes. Esther goes to the king, and can you imagine the nervousness? I'm sure she was shaking as she walked in. Walking through the doors, and the king sees her from the corner, and he's like, "Come forward!" And he extends his scepter to her. The sigh of relief that Esther must have had. Her life has been spared, and she has now the full attention of the king. He says, "What is troubling you, Esther? What do you want? What can I give you? Even up to half of the kingdom I'll grant you. If you want it." She says, "All I want is a personal dinner with me, you, and Haman." And the king's like, "Oh, sure, yeah, no problem. Yeah, I was going to offer you half the kingdom, but if you want dinner, yeah. Well, it's hard enough to find a place to eat with a woman, usually. But, hey, this is perfect setup right here, right? Why are we all laughing? Because it's true. Anyway, so King's like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll just do this dinner. So Haman's like, oh my gosh, what an honor. The king wants me to come eat personally with him and the queen. And the queen asked, wow, they must really like me. I am such an awesome person. Seriously, guys, I am just so incredibly awesome. And so he finds out about this news that he's going to be invited to a personal banquet. And he walks through the streets, and everyone is like bowing down. So let's just go ahead and read 5, verse 9. Then Haman went out of that day glad and pleased in his heart, right? He's like, good news. He's on his pedestal. He's like, please bow before me, nose raised, that kind of thing. And when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he did not stand up and tremble before him, Haman was filled with anger against Mordecai. So Mordecai just could not care less about Haman and his position. He just doesn't care about him. And this drives Haman crazy. So Haman controlled himself at that moment. He wasn't going to strangle Mordecai right there with his hands. But he went back to his house, he grabbed his friends and his wife. He said, listen, everybody come around. Come here, everybody. And he recounted to them the glory of his riches and the number of his sons and every instance where the king had magnified him and how he had promoted him above the princes and the servants of the king, and how even Esther the queen let no one but me come with the king to the banquet which she had prepared, and tomorrow also I am invited by her with the king. Yet all of this does not satisfy me, because I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate, and he does not bow before me. So what a pompous, arrogant man. He gathered his friends and his family around and told them how great he was. I'm sure they're like, yeah, oh yeah, at the time you killed, you're so great, Haman. Yeah. So he gathered them around, told them how great he was, and then he said, none of that matters to me. The only thing that matters to me is that Mordecai does not acknowledge who I am. Everyone knows how great I am. Why isn't Mordecai doing anything? Why is Mordecai acting this way? It drives him crazy, and so he builds a gallows 50 cubits high. Now, to put that in perspective, that's 75 feet. That's about 20 feet taller than this building. He builds a gallows to hang Mordecai from 75 feet tall. He really wants to make a mockery of this man. He's like, okay, I'm done with the subtle tactics. I tried to go the back door and killing him by killing off this entire people, but now I'm just going to straight up murder him, right? I'm just going to straight up hang him from the gallows, right? Now, this seems like a really bad situation, but before we go any further, let's remember what?
God has a plan.
Right? God has a plan for this situation. But we don't know how it's going to end yet. We can't see it. I mean, you could cheat and go to the end of the book, but, we're going to get there. So Haman, blood is just boiling at this point, and he builds this huge gallows to kill Mordecai. And he goes to the second dinner. He went to the first dinner, and he's going to the second dinner. Esther, at the end in the first dinner, let me explain. In the first dinner, King Ahasuerus says, "Now, what do you want? Like, we rearranged this dinner. You probably want something. You want a formal way to ask, right? You wanted Haman here." And she's like, "No, I just want another dinner." And King's like, "I will give you half my kingdom. What do you want?" "I just want another dinner." She's like, "Oh, okay, tomorrow night, Haman, same time, same place. Let's come back here, right?" And so they come back to the second dinner. And they're sitting there, they're eating, they're enjoying their time, cracking jokes about how stupid everybody else is compared to Haman. And Haman, and then the king asks again, "Hey, Esther, what do you want? I'll give you half my kingdom if you want it. What do you want?" So let's go ahead and remember, God has a plan for all this situation. Let's go ahead and start reading at verse 3 in chapter 7. The queen Esther replied to the king, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me as my petition. Spare my life and the life of my people." That's my request. "For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, to be annihilated. Now if we had only been sold as slaves, men and women, I would have remained silent, for that is not enough trouble to concern you with. It's not a good enough reason to concern you. But my life is on the line. I'm asking for my life and the life of my people." King Ahasuerus, I can imagine, probably stands up from dinner to Queen Esther. "Who is he? Where is he? Where is the man who presumes to do this to you? Where is that man?" Can you imagine being Haman by himself sitting there? Like Esther starts talking and he just tries to slide off into the distance, but he can't leave. And so he's trapped there. And then the king stands up, probably from dinner, like pacing. He's like, "Oh man, I'm going to get the guy who, tell me who he is. I'm going to get him. I'll do this, Esther. I was going to give you half my kingdom, but this sounds like fun. Let me know who this guy is, and I'm going to set things straight." And Esther said in verse 6, "A foe, an enemy is this wicked Haman."
Yeah.
Then Haman became terrified before the king and queen. The king arose in his anger from drinking wine and went into the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg for his life. "Please, king, no, that's not what I meant. I didn't know she was a Jew. Please, no, this is all a misunderstanding. Please, spare my life." He's begging for his life for Queen Esther. And he's begging Esther, "Please spare my life," and they're in the garden. And the king came into the garden. He saw Haman there with Esther, right? And then when the king returned to the palace garden, verse 8, he went into the place where they were drinking wine, and Haman was falling on the couch with Esther, probably like on her, groveling, like, "Please, give me my life, spare me." And the king saw this, and he said, "Will he even assault the queen in my house?" As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's head. This is a bad day for Haman. Now I'm going to tell you, it's going to get even worse for Haman. Right? Then Harbadon, one of the eunuchs who were before the king, verse 9, "Behold, indeed the gallows standing at Haman's house was 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on behalf of the king." And the king said, "Hang him on it." I'm sure he was smiling. The irony of the situation, too, we kind of skipped over this part because of time, but Haman, the king was wondering, "Hey, how do I glorify how do I glorify this man who I want to glorify, right? And so Haman's just actually on his way to ask the king if he can hang Mordecai, right? And so the king asks Haman this question. He's like, hey, what can I, to add insult to injury, he's like, hey, what can I do to glorify a man? And Haman's like, oh, you can glorify me. He's like, that's probably what he's thinking. He's like, oh, he can like ride on the horse. We're going to put the king's robe on him and prance him through the streets, make him out to be this great man. He's like, yeah, you should do that to Mordecai because he saved my life. And Haman, oh man. So not only this happened on the same day that this is happening, right? So Haman had to glorify Mordecai in the way he wanted to be glorified. He's begging for his life on the queen, and the king thinks he's assaulting her. And the king is also thinking that he has plotted to kill her entire race, right? And so this is just a bad day, and it finally ends with Haman being killed on the gallows for the man that he was infuriated with. What a sense of irony in this situation. It is just this greatest story of irony I know of. That everything was going for Haman, and it literally went 180 back the other direction for him in one day. Like I was telling you earlier, things change a lot for me in one day. This semester, the last 9 months. I have had a lot of long one days, but nothing compared to Haman's one day. So they hanged Haman on the gallows which he had prepared for Mordecai, and the king's anger subsided. Now are we starting to understand this? You know, God does have a plan. Now, they're sitting there. And the problem is that the king can't take back his edict. Once the king has made an order and it's been signed with a signet ring, it cannot be undone. And so now that the king is aware of the situation, that Esther and Mordecai and the entire people, his queen is life's at danger because of a rule he made, they're just sitting there like, what can we do now? What can we do now? Because he can't take back the order. The Jews are going to be killed. So Ahasuerus is like, hey, I got an idea. So he made a new edict that said the Jews were allowed to bring up arms against every single person that wanted to hurt them, and they had permission by law to slaughter them, kill them, women and children included, and take their livestock and anything that those people possessed. And that went out to all the same people that said that they could kill the Jews. So everyone is now aware that on the same day, the 13th of the 12th month, right, that the Jews are going to be able to be killed and genocided, but they're going to be able to fight back, kill your entire family, and take everything you have if they want to. Just so you know. So this is his solution. He can't undo his edict, but he made a new edict saying that the Jews have permission to murder and there will be no consequence. Right? And so, because God has a plan. There we go. Michael's on it. Because God has a plan, the Jews end up winning on the 13th day. When this genocide comes about, I'm sure Esther was well guarded by the king. He wasn't going to let anything happen to her. I'm sure Mordecai was well guarded also. But the Jews in the cities around the nation stood up and they fought and they won. But they didn't take any of the loot because that's not how they do. They're Jews, right? They follow God's commands. They're good people, right? So they only kill the people that are fighting against them. And they don't take what the families have. So the Jews win because God has a plan. You got to be listening. You got to be paying attention now. Because God has a plan. The Jews did not get killed. And they made it into a holiday. So if God can take this day meant for reckoning, a day meant for genocide, a day meant to wipe out a people, and change it into a day of celebration and joy and an official holiday that Jews to this day celebrate, what can he do in your life?
Amen.
Right? A year ago, I had no idea that I was going to be getting married in September of 2017. 2 months ago, I thought I was going to be working in a summer job at a warehouse. 3 months ago, I was living for free in a guy's house. And I also wasn't engaged. a lot changes, and we can't always see the end result. And Esther, I'm sure no one thought that this little peasant Jewish girl would ever grow up to be the queen. I don't think that they ever thought there was going to be a Jewish genocide. I don't think Haman thought there was going to be anything bad happening to him because he was so great. Or at least he thought so. And I'm sure the Jews did not expect to be having their day of genocide where they were going to be murdered by the nation on the king's orders turned into an official holiday by the king. There's a lot of things that we cannot see happening. So don't miss your opportunity to be involved in God's story. Esther, can you imagine if she passed up that chance? What could have changed? Mordecai had the faith that the Jews were going to be spared anyway, but say hypothetically that didn't happen, that wasn't necessarily how God wanted to work out. Jews could be a lot different today. Things could be a lot different because of this one woman's decision to stand up in courage, to take faith, to trust in God, and to follow the path laid out before her. Things worked out really well. Amen. And, interestingly enough, this is one of the books in the Bible that God is never mentioned in. But how many of you, through this story, did not see God?
Amen.
I do not have God talking to me on a daily basis, saying, Josiah, don't really worry about getting kicked out of that guy's house because, in 7 months you're going to get married. That's not how it works, right? But if you remain faithful and you put your trust in God and you're just willing to do what is right, He's going to work the plan out for you. And I'm not saying that every single plan works out quite as well as the book of Esther. Some people's stories end with death, torture, pain, murder, their houses burned, their families murdered alongside them. There's a lot of Christians whose lives have turned out that way over the years, over the last 2,000 years. It's not always, hey, let's have a feast, celebrate because the Jews have been spared. Sometimes it's a bad story. But that's not really the end. If we remember Romans 8:28, I'm sure some of you know it. As we know that God causes all things to work together for good of those who love God, and those who are called according to His purpose. And if you love God and you're called according to His purpose, which I believe every single one of you in this room is, then things are going to work out for you. That's a promise. A promise from God. He always keeps His promises. Now that doesn't mean that you're going to have a Mercedes, become the king of some foreign country or something like that. It doesn't mean you're going to inherit $1 million. It doesn't mean that. It's all about the end goal. God promised that you're going to spend eternity in the kingdom of God. He didn't promise that you're going to have prosperity now. But things will work out for good of those who love Him because He is going to change things in the end. Even if you die now, it will be good for you later. Amen. Always good later. Let's keep our focus there. And if you don't trust God, if you don't, I know you guys in here do, but if you're listening over YouTube, I encourage you to honestly look into the Christian faith, into who Jesus was, and to really contemplate giving your life to Him. Because it's going to change your life. And if you don't choose Him, there's no gray area. There's no standing in between. It's either God's side or not His side. And if you're not on His side, you're going to die forever. It's going to lead to eternal death. If you're on His side, you're going to live forever. Eternal life in His presence. Amen. A perfect life. A life with no more crying, pain, sorrow, death. None of that.
Amen.
So you get to choose. And besides, always remember that God is the one working in the world, and we're here just to help Him out and be along on His ride. So I'm just encouraging you to stay the course, be faithful, trust in God, and follow the way that He leads you, because it's always going to work out for good.
Amen.